Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistant's assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New subscribers only. Renew for 12 months to lock in savings. Taxes and fees extra. Additional restrictions apply. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Hello guys and welcome to this week's episode of Heavy Metal Tones with me, your podcast host, Tony Evans. Now, this is a bit of a reaction episode. I normally record these, as you said, on a Monday to go out on a Wednesday, but this is now Thursday the 5th of January here in Australia, and it's about 6:40 in the evening. Not that you really need to know that, but I came home from work after reading an article on the way home and having a discussion actually with my wife. All the Sanity stores in Australia are about to close. Now, you might not know what Sanity is in those that live outside of these shores of Australia. It is a record store. Well, it was just a music store. You could buy CDs and DVDs and at one time vinyl and cassettes. We've been around a very long time, and the last one has finally decided to close. I think there's one still open, but it's hanging on tightly, but the actual chain itself is finally gone. And it made me have a really sort of deep, sharp intake of breath, and a sort of a woeful thought actually about where is the music industry going. Why is it that now that vinyl is outselling CDs, okay, and cassettes are on the rise again? Now, what I'm trying to talk about, guys, is firstly, let's look at how we bought records when we were younger. Now, there's some out there listening to me that are not old enough to have had a record collecting past, but they used to have bought CDs and so on. Physical media. Okay, I've covered this before on the podcast, but this is just sort of a reaction to the news today. The lady that was talking in the newspaper article said that she was surprised that this is ahead of one of the music industry, was surprised that CDs lasted as long as they did. My darling wife calls them the con of the 20th century, because an analog form like a record, for instance, if it's left and kept and loved, it won't deteriorate in its audio quality, whereas CDs, I've got CDs I've bought, I don't buy many, but I bought my 6 years ago and I can't even play them, and they've been kept in their case in the right spot and the right place, and looked after, and I've got records that are almost 70 years old that play beautifully. Not saying that people who have huge CD collections, if that's how you get your music into your head and into your space, that's fine. I'm not bagging you out. That's your way, man. But what I'm trying to say is that where we would go. So where would we go when we were kids? We would go to record stores, right? It was like, not all of them were chain stores. I used to go to one in Edgware called Loppy Lugs. It was a fantastic little record store. It was ages away from my house, but I'd go there because they had such a great collection. And the guy was passionate about music. There used to be one in Hendon Broadway, I can't remember the name of it now, but I bought a Lord of the Rings audio book on double vinyl there when I was like 12. it was that sense of the person that owned the store or run the store had a passion for the music. My friend Millsy, he used to run the ABC music stores, and he had a passion. He's got a real passion for music. He sort of understood. You walk through the door, and there was no judgment. If I went up to the counter and I took up my empty, because you take up an empty copy of it, you flick through the shelves, and you take the empty sleeve to the counter, and they'd fill it with a record for you, right? Or get a fresh cover. Often the covers were stolen; they didn't have the records to go with them. But you take it up there, and you could take up, I don't know, Boy George, Wham, whatever. You could take up Gregorian chants. No one would really care. He wouldn't judge you because you were there buying music, and you were there in the process of enjoying the medium of music and its production, right? So I was thinking, Loppy Lugs for me, and Our Price Records in Brent Cross. It wasn't owned. I don't think the people who worked there were music nuts, but they certainly knew their thing, right? And I would go and buy. I remember buying Iron Maiden's Tail Gunner in every format possible. And I remember the guy saying, "You sure you want this?" And I had like the picture disc, cassette, single, CD, single. I bought the whole lot in one hit, right? Because at that time it was pennies, really. You wouldn't pay a lot of money, okay, for the product. So this also made me think about the dollars that we splash out for this music that we buy, right? And I'll come to that later on. Park that thought. We'll get there in a minute. But we have to be thankful that the hipsters of the world, they've given us good coffee, they've given us good food, and they've brought the love of true audio back to the mass market. Now we know us sort of we're not non-converts. We've been at the Church of Vinyl for our whole lives, right? And cassettes, and we know that. I was talking to James, my friend, about this. The same thing. He was amazed that cassettes were suddenly popular again. And I said, yeah, cassettes are popular again for the same reason they were popular 40 years ago, because they're portable. You can enjoy making mixtapes with them. They're colourful, fun, easy, throwaway almost to some extent, and very collectible. The downside to cassette collecting at the moment is that the mechanisms that they're asking us to play the cassettes on. So you go out and earn and splash your hard-earned dollars and Deutschmarks and Lira and Pound and Pfennig and whatever over to buy yourself a mechanism. Most of the mechanisms now, or cassette tapes now, are a very cheap one brand. I think it's Takchi. I can't remember the full name. Anyway, they're really poorly made. The motor is very close to the mechanism. They're usually mono heads and they're not stereo heads. The heads themselves aren't that great. When you push down the play button, it's clunky. There's no, some people who don't know about cassette might think that's the way it should be, and it's not. We lived through a time, the wondrous time when you had touch cassettes, like touch button, where a very sensitive digital button you touch and the mechanism would move smoothly. I started out with a cassette Walkman. It was my brother's, the original genuine first generation Walkman. It was like a brick, but it had everything. It had individual volumes left and right. It had you name it, it had everything that a stereo would have. It was brilliant. Then we sort of managed to get those down to the size of a cassette. I had some that you could literally, it took one AAA battery, and it was the size of a cassette because all of the electronics were in the headphone cable, a separate thing. So you just had the mechanism. And we really miniaturized this stuff, and it was amazing. It was portable and beautiful to use. And so that's why we kept using cassettes. Now, sadly, as I said, unless you're going to buy a really nice reconditioned old model, or you know how to recondition one yourself like I did with my beautiful Marantz tape deck, you're going to get a quite poor sounding product. Because the trouble with this is that you're then paying top dollar in some cases for product, and you play it through mechanisms of poor. It's going to put you off, right? It's really going to put you off, yeah. And the beauty of cassettes as well is that they are cheap. I go to a gig. If I go to a gig, often if the band's got a vinyl or a CD, I'll buy the cassette. There, I've got it because I can put it in my pocket while I'm at the gig. It's easy for me to get home, and I've got a little piece of the band, and it feels really cool, and it feels my warm fuzzy moment where I've bought some analog audio. Anyway, I'm going off the site. I'm going off the topic in hand, which was the closing of Sanity. So I remember going and seeing. We go to the record stores with our pennies and our dollars and would buy them. Now Sanity's gone. So where are we left? What are we left with? We're left with. The big brand mainstream record stores that are, let's be honest, milking the dollar for as much as they can. And then you've got your small independents that are trying their best, like Landspeed Records in Canberra, which I think is one of the best record stores in the world. They just have this... You walk in, it's like, as I said before, it's like walking back into 1985. It's this passion they have. It's this knowledge, this want to be around the physical medium in a way that you don't get with mass-produced CD stores. Okay. Anyway, where do we go? Right. So we have to go to those our mainstream stores that are now doing it. So here we have JB Hi-Fi. The trouble with JB Hi-Fi is, firstly, no store keeps the same type of records, so you can't go into one where I am in Tuggeranong and look for one record, but then you go into the city store, which is a bigger store. Granted, use bigger stores have more turnover, but they should have an equal kind of record collections. Also, you don't find interesting one-offs and alternate versions most of the time. It's what the record reps or companies' reps have given them to pump out, right? So it's a bit soulless. You buy your vinyl there, but it's a bit soulless. You pay extraordinary big money. I think these days in these places. I mean, I know that we have a cost of living crisis around the world. Yes, we do. But even before then, where a record may cost you $30 Australian, maybe $20 American, you're looking $70 Australian now. Like, I picked up, there's a copy in JB Hi-Fi in Tuggeranong. They've got a copy of the Clash's first album, and I've got that. Okay, I've got the Canadian print, the British print, the Australian print, all first copies. I've also got reissued copies. Now, that reissued copy there was $85. Now, unless that record has got some hidden secret in it, I don't see the reason. Well, we'll get to in the second part why I think the prices are what they are. It's probably what's killed off Sanity a bit as well. Anyway, they're just a little bit out of price. A young guy who earns a couple of $100 a week wants to buy a record because he really wants to get into the collecting thing. That's half his wages. Yeah, he could save up. Why should he need to? I think we are. It's gone the wrong side, and that's why I think that people like Sanity are closing. Firstly, yes, records are taking over vinyl, right? We know that. We also know that downloading and streaming has taken that market away. But if that was the case, why would vinyl suddenly be outselling CDs? If streaming is killing physical media, I don't think it is. I think streaming is aiding physical media. I think it's a need and want for us to sort of nostalgia, yeah, but also the understanding, the understanding of the physical media like a record is much more enjoyable to use. You lay on your bed when you were a teenager, didn't you? My wife was talking about this evening, and you'd have the record in front of you and you'd read who was on it. You could look at the artwork. When someone spends 6 months of their life painting an artwork, the classic example is Mark Wilkinson, who does all of the Marillion. We used to do all the Marillion covers that Iron Maiden and Judas Priest, but predominantly Marillion, his work and Fish's work. That work should be seen in a size of 12 inches and more. It's not for looking at on a stamp. It just doesn't work. And then when they go to create that art, they have to create the art so it looks good small as it does big, and you lose detail. When Derek Riggs painted the painting for the cover of Somewhere Back in Time. Oh, sorry, not Somewhere Back in Time. You know what I mean? I'm a bit sort of passionate to, sorry, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying, right? Somewhere back in time was a tour they did. Apologise. That's what as we've discussed this. If you go right back to my early episodes, I did an episode on Maiden covers, and this is one of the sort of preeminent, amazing covers. Like, it's so much detail in it that you try and see that on a CD cover, you're not going to see it. You're really not going to see it. So there are generations out there that have bought this product and cannot see this wonderful stuff that's going on. Pick the vinyl up, it's all there, it's in your face. You can see every single Easter egg and every single in-joke and every single movement and reverence to the band and their history in this cover. Right? So people want that. They want that again, and I think it's not all about hipsters in tofu eating hipsters in Raphael work sandals and long socks, man buns and coffee and let's listen to the latest jazz album on vinyl because it's really trendy. No, it's not about that. I don't think. I think if that was the case, then the money would not be flowing through to this medium. It clearly is outselling. And I don't see it stopping either. But anyway, where I was going from. So you've got these big stores. They're not. You can't get a good selection in them. Considering that they buy in bulk, they charge more, and I don't understand. I don't know whether that's because inadequacy in understanding the marketplace, or the feeling they're going to bulk them for every dollar they can. Now I know there's not a lot of markup in vinyl. I know that. I really know that. And the reason that is, and I'll tell you what the reason that is, we'll get to that on the B-side in a minute. But there's a reason to that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go away and get myself a quick drink, calm myself down, and we'll chat on the other side about costings and where we go from here. Anyway, talk to you soon.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Welcome back, guys, to part 2. So, as you can see, I'm quite passionate about this, and I've not made notes here with this. I'm just going, which is a knee-jerk reaction to the article I read. Okay, so on the A side, as I talked in the first part of the show, I talked about why the prices are where they are. Now, there's a couple of reasons. Okay, economics, yes, but B is because we don't have as many pressing plants in the world anymore, right? There's very few really good pressing plants. Now, in the old days, a band, say like The Who, would record an album. They would send the master copies to all major continents, so Australia, America, South Africa, South America, all those. Those master copies would go to the pressing plant, and there'd be a few pressing plants, and they would press the record there, make the covers there, do all of the stuff there. Therefore, keeping it in the country, firstly, therefore, you're not importing, you're not paying extra duties and taxes. Okay, that's why in record collecting, you get so much beautiful variants in earlier days where you get, like I just mentioned, I've got the Clash's first album, I've got it on the Canadian print, I've got the American print, I've got the UK print, the Australian print, New Zealand print, because they have different run-out notes. They can sometimes have different variants in the artwork. They can have different codes. If you want to be a nerd about this stuff, baby, you can be a real fucking nerd about this stuff. Anyway, but because they were produced in the country that people were buying them in, now those countries still exported them because people in England wanted to buy an Australian print, but that's fine. That's that country's market. But here, for instance, you'd have a pressing plant in Melbourne, one in Sydney, maybe one in Perth, okay, maybe one, because it's a big country, so you'd have them around the place. And so therefore, the dollars that were coming through the dollars we could charge for those records were much, much less because we didn't have all the import stuff, right? So therefore, you go to the record store and it made sense. You'd buy a record for $10 or £10 or, roughly at that time, maybe an hour's wage, maybe 2 or 3 hours wage, whatever it was, whatever year it was, okay? And so the record stores could stay alive because they could buy a truckload of them and sell them on. And obviously you'd send back ones that didn't sell or return, but you'd make a good profit on them because you weren't paying all the taxes and duties. Fantastic. Right. So that's one side reason records are expensive, and the reason why places like Sanity have lost and will lose, and companies like that have gone. So what we're doing about it? Well, according to resources, we are opening new pressing plants in Australia. There's a new one opening in Melbourne. I believe one in Adelaide comes quite soon. Once that happens, in theory, we should be having the reduction in price of the vinyl. The second stage is this, guys, and I really mean this. I am an audiophile. I really love very crisp, clean sound, but I also love the crackle and pop that you get, the hiss and the moan that you get with an older record, that you get with a slightly dusty record. I don't care. Right, it's something that gives me warmth and pleasure. If I want a completely audiophile copy, I'll put the effing CD on, right? If I can find a copy of it. Now, this is where the problem occurs with why people like Sanity have gone and why JB Hi-Fi will, sort of ruining it slightly, is because what you need is with all product, this is supply and demand, but you need options, okay? As I said in the first part, I go and buy every single one. I get the single, the whatever. When I walk into a record store, if, say, Stephen Wilson has released a new Porcupine Tree album, and he's got two options, okay? He's got the audiophile option, which will cost you $50. Here it is, 180 grams, right? Beautiful, slightly different artwork. Make it more value for money, right? In that package. Now, there are some record labels out there, which I can talk about later, which do give you amazing value. Transcending Obscurity is one of them. It's just beautiful, beautiful value product. But that aside, okay. Then you could look at the food list and you might think, okay, but I'm an 18-year-old music fan. I like Porcupine Tree. I can't buy that at $50. I'm never going to own it. But next to it, in the same rack, is the $20 version, which is not 180 grams, which is slightly more flimsy, and I was showing Karen this afternoon. I've got one, you flip it and it goes out, it's like a wobble board. Wobble, wobble, wobble. It doesn't make the sound any worse if you don't know what you're listening for, okay? If you go home and you put your vinyl on an expensive, beautiful $10,000 cartridge, or even like a nice $400 cartridge with beautiful speakers, and it's something you set up and you spent a long time working on it, you will hear the difference. If you go home and put it on your flea market record deck, right, or your $100 record deck you bought from the local audio supplier, because that's what you could afford, you're not going to hear the difference. So unless you're a collector, we need to get back to having value for money when it comes to the records. Make it something so the kids, I'm saying this, the kids can have it. Because at the moment, it's us 50-somethings with double income and no kids and no mortgage anymore that go out and spend the cash. And that's where, but we are not going to buy in trendy record stores. Like, we're not. We're going to go to the ones we feel comfortable with. People my age don't like change. We'll go to Landspeed. We'll go to Songland. We'll go to Reckless Records in Sydney. We'll go wherever. We go to those places that we feel nostalgic and comfortable and warm. But the young people aren't going to do that because they're intimidated by that, these places. So we need to, if we want the future of vinyl to stay buoyant and upright, firstly, more pressing plants, see more option for them to buy the records at a not less quality, but yes, less of it. I saw the other day, someone was trying to sell me a 240 gram vinyl print. Now, just to be nerdy, the heavier the platter, the less vibration, the more true the needle plays in the groove. Yeah, absolutely, I get that. I absolutely get it. But again, this is for people that are, and they will go there. They will become those people once they've got into it. But I didn't go into Boots the Chemist when I was 9 years old and buy with my pocket money the Who's by numbers because I wanted an audiophile quality. I wanted to take that record home. I wanted to put it on my record deck and I wanted to play it loud. And it was the only way I could do it then, because it was that or CD or cassettes. But there was also, if I remember rightly, I could still get that. And my brother had it on an 8-track, but that's a whole nerdy thing. Won't go there, right? I'm just saying the options weren't there. If I'd gone into the record shop into Boots the Chemist, would you believe it? A chemist sold records. I'd go in there and I had my £5 in my hand. It was saved up for weeks and weeks and weeks. My brother gave me an extra £1 because I wasn't quite there for it. And I looked at the record rack, and that same record was £50 or £25. I would have walked away, and I would have never have enjoyed and appreciated that moment in my life because it was far too prohibitively expensive. And this is what's happening, why people like Sanity have gone out of business. It's not because CDs have taken over, it's because the record industry demands us to listen to vinyl at such a high level that we can't afford it. It's gone into the pockets of the nerds, and that's fine because I'm a music nerd and I appreciate it, but we need to bring it back. You know what I mean? It's as simple as that. It's the same with as I've talked to you in the first part about the mechanisms. You know, if we're going to proliferate the market with this older, tried and tested from the 60s, well, records are old since the 20s, but vinyl since the 60s. Sorry, cassette since the 60s, compact cassette since the 1960s. If we're going to go with that tried and tested medium, we need to give the consumer an option to play it cheaply, not so much cheaply, but with an option to choose different levels. If I go into, not all of us are Kim Kardashian kind of money, right? If I walk into a stereo store and I've saved and I've budgeted and I go, I want a stereo for my lounge room or my bedroom or my music room or wherever, and I want to spend $250 or £250 or 175 US or whatever I want to spend, I need to have an option that I'm not going to get a turd of a system, because they are awful cassette decks. They are awful. There's a really great YouTube channel called Techmoan, Techmoan. He's an English guy. He's got hundreds and hundreds of videos up. He does a brilliant thing about modern day tech, because he's a tech nerd like me, like a stereo nerd. He does a thing about modern tape deck mechanisms, and it will blow your mind the quality, the shit that they put in what we think is high end, and it's very, very hard now to find cassette decks. So obviously, if cassettes are booming, companies are going to make them, but what they're going to do is they're going to try and whittle down the dollars. Unless you're going in and buying yourself a Bang & Olufsen or a Bose or high-end Sony or whatever, you're just going to get a plastic box that resonates badly with a mechanism. Now, one of the problems with cheap tape decks, guys, is woe and flutter. Now, if you know what woe and flutter is, you probably all know what it means. It's that woo, it's when a tape sound, if you played a signal, say a straight signal at 8 dB, and it was like a whistle, like that, it would wave up and down and go. It's the tape deck itself, the motor not at a steady level. It's a poorly made motor and a poorly made mechanism, so it's gaining and slowing, and that ruins the sound of your tapes. Now, on a tape deck, on a record deck, a bit of hiss and crackle, be my guest, perfectly fine. But woe and flutter on a tape deck, it's absolutely shocking, and you can hear it, and it would put you off playing your tapes. It really will. So those mechanisms, you can, if you know what you're doing, you can open them up and you can adjust the power in the motor. There's a little screwdriver, a little screw above the motor with a plus and minus, so you can add or minus some of the power to bring that woe and flutter down. But you need a woe and flutter meter to check it, and who's going to do that? No one, right? No one's got one. Techmo's got one, but he does it for a living, right? So you want to be able to firstly, so what we need, where I'm coming from is, if we want record stores like Sanity back, if we want more variety back, and we want to bring the fun and the collection and people being more integrated with their medium, we need to firstly bring the price of the records down. We need to give more choice. We need to make the product that we're playing it on not some cheap rubbish that's poorly made. And I'm not going to say China, I don't mean it, that just they are poorly made, a lot of this stuff, mass produced. They get the one mechanism, they just put it in everything. Honest goodness, the thought of putting my record collection, and I have a very, very valuable, for me, dollars and sentiment record collection. The thing of putting something of mine, even the stuff I don't really care that much about, onto a flea market record deck just makes my eyes want to roll back into the head and explode. It really does. It just hurts me. But I wasn't always at that level. I would play records on the shittiest of record decks. I was very lucky, though, because I had brothers who were record deck nerds and stereo nerds, and we would spend hours and hours and hours, and I mean criminally hours, walking around, hi-fi stores looking. There's a really great, funny sketch on not the 9 o'clock news, when they do the whole guy Mel Smith goes in to buy a record player, and they take the young guys behind the deck when they counter take the piss out of him. I mean, and I've been there when people would try to be like that. My brother's just like, no, I'm telling you what I want. I want this, I want that, I want linear tracking, I want this, it was just a beautiful thing to watch. So we need to bring the mechanisms of tape decks, we need record decks up to a level where you're not paying. Yeah, if you want to pay criminally high money, fine. If you've got $7,000 for a record deck and you love it so much, then and trust me, if I had 10 grand to pay on a record deck, I'd fucking spend it. I'd spend it. Okay, because you get to know what's valuable and what's valuable, good for money, right? I mean, we don't have magazines like What Hi-Fi anymore, where you could get the magazine and go for it and get really good advice. Yeah, there's websites, but websites are often, there's a lot. I mean, let's be honest, the internet is a wonderful and amazing thing, but a lot of it's full of shit and bad advice. So we need more educated people to sell their product. We need the product to come down in price. We need a variant of product, and that's the only real way we're going to get stores like Sanity and the feeling that we had as kids to the future of our children, their children, when it comes to music. It really, simple as that, right? Simple as that. So I ranted there because I genuinely feel very passionate about it, right? Because we are conning a generation of people that I think they're. I mean, I used to go to stand. I was standing in JB Hi-Fi 2 days ago, and looking through the records, and these teenagers come in, college girls. Not a single idea, not a one jot of idea of what they're looking for, but they were having fun, and they were talking about, hey, look at the artwork, it's amazing, look at this horror artwork, and look at, my dad's got this on, I've got a record player, we should buy a record and go home and play it on dad's record deck. And then they look at the record price, and truly, you should have seen the color drain from them, right? It was like, oh, this is $79, guys. I've been at gigs with 3 hours of live music that cost less than that. Now, as I said, I would pay it. My friend John and Matt and Millsy, we pay it because we can afford to pay it, and we know what we're buying most of the time. But those people, those girls, they're lost, right? They've walked away because it wasn't an option for them to buy the same record at $20, which I'm sure they probably could have afforded. I think also, to be fair, the death of the music chart has also killed the record stores like Sanity, really, because I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of singles, right? I would go and buy a single with whatever money I had in my pocket. And it didn't matter that it was only one song. I mean, I talk to people that won't collect singles because it's one song. What the fuck? I used to buy that song because it was the only way I could afford at that time to get new music in my life that I could have permanent. As I'd buy the single for £1, 50p, $1.10, £1.20. You buy the single, because often on the B-side, used to be the case, and remember this, guys, used to be the instrumental version on the B-side, and then they would put singles on the B-side, and you'd have double A-sides and songs that weren't on the albums. So you'd buy that single, and you'd buy all the singles off the album, because and you'd go in and you'd look at and if you weren't sure what you were buying, you'd often see them on a Saturday morning. I'd walk in looking for the latest Marillion single, or Iron Maiden single, or XTC single, whatever, and you'd see them looking at the charts, young kids, and they'd be like, oh, what looks good? That's number 5. Let's get that. And so they would expand their minds for a few pennies. They might take home and hate the living shit out of it, but they also might go, well, no, you know what? I took that risk. I took that punt, because you could for £1. You could for 50p. You could for £2, right? It wasn't going to, that's why I suppose streaming to some extent is my shop window. So I go streaming, I listen to it on streaming, and then I'll buy the physical copy, because it's may of me going, they are expensive. I will use this as a way of medium of listening to on the move, and I will buy the physical copy. But anyway, so singles. So I think the death of the singles, the top 10 has gone, has killed it as well, right? If we're going to bring back cassettes, truly, if we're going to bring back cassettes to sell people, we also need to bring back blank cassettes. You can buy new unused product on eBay cassettes, but they cost a fortune. Like a pack of 5C60 cassettes is like $50. That's ridiculous. So bring that back into the marketplace. So you can make a mixtape for the one you love. You can make a tape of stuff for the car. You may not have a cassette deck in the car, but you know what I mean. You can make it for friends who might have cassettes. You can swap it. You can do sorts of stuff, right? Anyway, the death of the singles also killed Sanity. I think that slowly killed it, right? Also, as I mentioned in one of my podcasts before, Apple's ability to split the whole album into $1 songs also killed those record stores, because you wouldn't go and buy, like, Vanilla Ice's album sold so many records, vinyl and CDs, because you could only buy, you wanted it for the one song, right? But you bought the whole album, because you couldn't get the one song because you might have missed it. The single's gone out of the charts. It's gone. And so that particular artist got the huge revenue on this album. But as soon as you could break it into segments and pay $1 per song, why would you bother buying the album? You just buy that song anytime you want it. So all those other 9 songs which could be valid have gone, and that income stream for that particular artist is gone. So we do need to bring back physical singles. Bring it on. I think I'd be out most weekends buying singles. Excuse me a second. As usual, my for some reason, I've told you this before, I set this so that my laptop wouldn't go into sleep mode, and it goes into sleep mode. Play silly thing. Anyway. Yeah, so that's another reason. So all the things I've mentioned are why things like Sanity have gone. And let's just take a second here to say goodbye to a place where many, many teenagers, many old adults of my age, spent their hard-earned money to pray and to pay tribute at the altar of music and bring it home and be part of it. I've told John this many times. I've said to many of my friends, the reason I love vinyl is that when I have that copy, because it's a physical imprint of the music on the copy, it feels like I've got that musician in my room. I own something part of that musician, right? Whereas a CD with just ones and zeros, and it's not the same. It's just not the same. Anyway, I'm rabbiting on too long. I just wanted to. This is off the cuff. No notes, just how I feel at the time. But yeah, goodbye. Let's take a moment and say goodbye, and say goodbye to all the store. If every country you're in, all of us would have a store, all of us, because we've listened to this podcast, we like music, we've all been to a record store, okay? We all have one in every country, in every city, in every town, in every village, and everywhere we are, where it's gone, bye-bye, ta-ta. Because of all the factors that I've mentioned, because of the dollars that it costs to buy the records, because of the proliferation of cheap product that people don't feel connected to. And there are people that are out there who love it. I mean, Matt's got a huge CD collection. It's one of the biggest CD collections you'll ever see. It's a sight to behold. It's beautiful. But that's how he takes his music. That's how he has reverence and understanding for it. But most people don't. They're chucked in the car on a hot day and they warp. They lose them down the back of the cupboard. You know what I mean? It's made music. To some extent, streaming as well has made music a throwaway medium that no longer is something that's soulful, creative, wanted. It's not a affirmation anymore, right? But we all got those stores, so let's all say goodbye in our heads quietly. Let's take a second here. Yeah, says enough. Just say goodbye, right? And hopefully those memories are still with you, but they will come back. It will happen if what I said happens. If I was the president of the universe, would be the case, right? You know, the punk ethos the punks had a great ethos, right? That was not the American punks, the UK punks had a great ethos that was sell this record for no more than £1 or £2. It's why the Clash, when they released Sandinista, which is a 4 vinyl epic, the reason why that they struggled with the record label and had massive fights is that they wanted to release that record for $4.99, I think it was, or $3.99, but because it was 4 vinyl, the record label was like, no, it has to be much, much more, and they didn't want that. They wanted their fans, all of them, could own the product, the quality that it is, in the level it was, for an affordable product, and they could still make money on it. There was only the record labels that were demanding that they paid more, that they charged more. It's not my favourite album. That's neither here nor there. Okay, but this is why the punk ethos had it right. They had it right. Yeah, it's, you know, sell the records and the vinyl, the cassettes and so on at a level that everyone can enjoy. Make it a level playing field for all of us to worship at that altar, as I said. Anyway, that's me. I've said my dash today. I'm going to go now and sit in front of a fan and cool down, because it has really riled me today. It's really sort of got in my head that these things are all disappearing. Thank goodness for Lansby Records, and thank goodness for all those record stores out there that are part of Record Store Day. That's why Record Store Day is also extremely important. Extremely important. It's my Christmas day, to be honest with you. I love it. In fact, I live for that first week or second week in April. I really do. When the lists come out, I get very, very excited. So that's it for me, guys. What take away from this is all of us now have a quiet thought about that place we went to when we were kids, that we bought our records from. It could be Impact Records here in Canberra. It could be there was all sorts of places here in Australia, but for me in UK it was Loppy Lugs, it was Our Price, it was even the Tape and Record Exchange in Camden Town. You know, they had branches everywhere, Camden Town, Notting Hill. I would travel, this is the truth, it was a second-hand record store, and I would travel around the whole of North London to each one of those on a Saturday and try and find a bargain, because how it worked was a record would come in, they'd price it say 10 quid, and it'd sit there, and each week it didn't sell, they'd get a little label and they'd reduce it by £1. And I would go and I would do cheeky things, like I would put the record at the back of the collection, and I'd bide my time and hope that record got down to like 50p, and then I'd buy it and snap it up. Sometimes I'd miss it, someone would have bought it before me, but I'd take that chance, right? And you could get some absolute crackers. You know, they had a basement where everything was 50 pence, and I picked up some brilliant XTC stuff and some really, really good Killing Joke stuff there that just didn't sell upstairs, right? We've all got those places in our minds, and I think let's take a thought for all those people that worked in those places that had passion for it. Let's hope they haven't become soulless office workers that don't care for music anymore. And I'm not saying that all office workers are that case. I'm not, but you know what I'm saying. I'm just painting a picture of a grey person with no love of passion of music in their life, and I feel that's sad for those people. But anyway, let's just leave it there. Let's have those thoughts. Let's hope that we have the same conversation in a year's time or 2 years' time, and I revisit the same subject, and we have got a proliferation of wonderful record stores on our high streets where we can go in at a reasonable price, buy a good product, but if we want to specialize, spend more money and treat ourselves, get a better product, but within our means to do so. But if we choose to get the cheaper one, but we don't lose anything at all in its quality, that's where it should be. All right. And then hopefully also we'll said better mechanisms, better education on the mechanisms of cassette decks, better education on tape decks and how they work, and stereo setups. All right. What you do is you go into your house. If you've got one of those horrible cheap micro systems sitting somewhere, honestly, chuck it in the bin. Right now, chuck it in the bin. Go and get yourself some separates. Go get yourself some, specifically designed pieces. Secondhand is probably the best way to do it. I'll do a whole episode again on that, on where to go and how to do it sometime soon, because that's an interesting topic. But you know what? Treat the music with reverence, and treat the product with reverence as well. Anyway, that's me for now. Talk to you next week. Bye, guys. Bye for now.